Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to Think 10 Languages. I am back from Mexico. Had a really great time there. And so I'm just going to wait here for a few seconds for some viewers to join. Anyways, today I wanted to talk about mixing up languages in your brain, which is something that I've been doing a lot lately, especially after having an entire semester of learning just French. I had 2 French classes, no Spanish classes, and then I went to Mexico for 2 weeks, and I was trying to speak Spanish, and all the French was coming out. There was definitely some times I was ordering in restaurants and stuff, and I said, "Quisiera una coca, s'il vous plaît," and it's just tough. It's hard keeping languages straight in your brain. This semester, so now I'm back from Mexico, had a really good time there. And this semester, I am taking 2 Spanish classes and 1 French class, and I have them all one right after another. So I have Spanish from 9:30 to 10:45. I have my next Spanish class from 11 to 12:30 to 12:15, and I have my French class from 12:30 to 1:45. And my last Spanish class and my first French class, my only French class, are in the same room. So I'm literally just going to sit in the same room, watch all of my Spanish classmates walk out, and then watch all my French classmates walk in, and I'm going to have to switch my brain from Spanish to French in that amount of time. So it's going to be real interesting, to say the least. Hey, Bowler Silas, he says, "Hello, Fingtem, how are you?" I'm doing really well. I'm doing fantastic, actually. I had a great time in Mexico. Thanks for asking. Thanks for joining. So I'm interested to hear if you guys have had similar, what would you say, similar dilemmas, similar circumstances, issues, mixing up languages in your brain like I have. And then we're going to talk about, some ways of dealing with that. So for me, it's particularly difficult because the languages that I'm learning are French and Spanish, which, they're not as similar as maybe French and Portuguese or something. So maybe I should count my blessings, but they are very similar. They share a lot of vocabulary words. They're both those Latin-based Romance languages, which was very helpful for me learning French at the beginning because, you're just flying through tons of vocabulary words, and you're like, you'll see a French word for the first time, and you're like, well, it looks just like the Spanish word, or very similar to the Spanish word. So it's easy to remember. And, that's true. But then the flip side of that coin is that a lot of times when they're similar enough, I'll accidentally say the Spanish word when I mean to say the French word, or I'll say the French word when I'm speaking Spanish. Or sometimes you're like, all right, I know there's a word in French that I'm trying to say, but the only word that's come into my brain is the Spanish one. And I know it's different, but I can't remember how that word is different. So it's tough. It's tough. And so what can you do? Well, I still struggle with this. I haven't found the answer. One thing that I do like to do, because I've had a situation like this in the past where I've had French class, and then immediately after that I had Spanish class. Not immediately after, like half an hour, 45 minutes after, or something like that. One thing that I did is that in between classes, before my French class, I would put in my headphones when I was in the hallway waiting for class to start, and I would listen to French music or watch French YouTube videos or French TV show or something. Listen to something in French to get my brain in that French mode. and then, you know, sit through French, do the French class. And then afterwards, I would immediately get out of class, put in my headphones again, start listening to Spanish music, try to get my brain in Spanish mode. And, you know, just as long as it takes to walk down the hallway and get to my Spanish class, that helps. That has been helpful. I find that it's always like the first 2 to 5 minutes of class where I would walk into my Spanish class and say, bonjour tout le monde. You know, after you get acclimated a little bit, you start to get into the mode of the language that you're speaking. And that's exactly what I tried to do on a larger scale when I was going to Mexico earlier this month. Like I said, I had spent an entire semester of taking only French classes, and then on December 22nd, I took my last French final, and then I was done with the semester. So immediately, December 23rd, I went onto Spotify, made my Spanish playlist, started listening to Spanish music, started watching Spanish TV shows again. I watched 5 or 6 episodes of South Park in Spanish. What else did I do? Oh, hello, Emma. Color code, note card, notebooks, flashcards, maybe change seats in the classroom, have a French seat and a Spanish seat. Yeah, actually, that's true. Yeah, try to separate them in your brain. Do anything you can do. Well, there's one other thing that I did. Started reading Spanish books in Link after starting on December 22nd, because I was just trying to break that French that had been, you know, gripping my brain for the entire semester. And I spent like 2 weeks. I probably could have been a little more disciplined, but pretty regularly listening to Spanish, watching Spanish TV shows, reading in Spanish, all that kind of stuff. And let me tell you, it was still kind of a struggle to go back to speaking Spanish in Mexico. Towards the end of the trip, you know, I was there for 2 weeks, so your brain starts to get re-immersed in Spanish again. So I started to get used to it again. But after spending basically an entire semester and most of the summer without speaking Spanish at all, it was a struggle. It was a struggle to go back to Spanish. Please Clap says Spanish and French are very similar. Yeah, and you know, it's a double-edged sword, because it can be helpful in a way when you're trying to learn one from the other. I have a book called Learning Spanish from French and French from Spanish. And it's a really helpful book because it capitalizes on the similarities between the two languages, and it helps you learn one from the other one. And it's great. You know, it makes learning one a lot easier in one sense, but then it also makes it way easier to confuse them. So far, the only languages that I have learned are Romance languages, well, or we'll say Latin. I don't know how I would categorize all the languages I've learned, because one of them is Esperanto, which isn't a Romance language, but it is like based off of Latin. So all of the languages that I've learned so far have been very similar. So I'm looking forward to, European languages, I guess, although Esperanto, I don't know if I would even classify that as a European language. It was created in Europe, so I suppose, you know, based off of European languages. Forward here, I'm definitely going to start learning a non-Indo-European language this year. Still kind of deciding what my year is going to look like in that sense. So I'm excited to see what it's like. See how much I'm going to mix up the languages that I already know with some non-Indo-European languages. Do they mix up at all? I mean, if they're that vastly different, am I going to confuse them? I imagine there will probably still be some mixing and some confusion. I don't know. We'll see. It'll be an interesting experiment. It's what I'm all about on this channel. Experimenting, trying new things, learning more about myself, learning how to learn languages, learning things that don't work for me. I love it. I love it. And mixing up languages in your head is definitely a phenomenon that needs to be addressed. So I'm interested to hear if you guys have experiences with this. I'm pretty sure everyone that speaks more than one language has probably had experiences like this in the past, even if you're only learning one language, right? Like you spend your whole, you're in French class and you only speak English and French, but then you walk out of French class and you bump into someone and you're like, oh, pardon, right? Or you walk into your next class and you say bonjour, and then you're like, wait, crap, I'm not supposed to be speaking French anymore, right? I'm supposed to speak my native language now. That happens to me sometimes when I'm trying to speak English. Sometimes if I've been speaking French or speaking Spanish a lot, sometimes the Spanish or the French word will come out. Especially like just those little, I never actually start speaking full sentences to someone in a foreign language accidentally, but occasionally, those little words that just come out like, oh, excuse me, or, oh, pardon me, or hey, sorry. All those little words, you stub your toe and you're like, ah, puchica. I don't know if that's a real common Spanish word, but when I lived in El Salvador, that was the thing that we said, puchica. And it took me a long time after getting back to the United States to start stubbing my toe and say ow instead, right? I would say puchica, or something amazing would happen and I would say huela, and people would look at me and be like, what did you say? And I was like, huela. It's like what you say when something cool happens in El Salvador. And so if you only have experience learning one language and that's already happening to you, you're mixing it with your native language, try learning 2 second languages. Man, it's tough. It's tough. But I am excited to learn a non-Indo-European language and see the contrast between learning 2 Indo-European languages versus learning Indo-European and non-Indo-European simultaneously. So, well, this is going to be a short live stream today because I'm about to go on in about an hour. I'm going to be going on the LangFest Facebook live stream. They're doing a Facebook stream, and they're having me on as a guest today, which I'm super excited about. So if you guys, hey Joe, thanks for joining. So if you guys are not doing anything in about an hour, it's going to be noon Eastern Standard Time, so 11 o'clock for me here in Central Time Zone. I don't even know what we're talking about. Presumably LangFest. I went to LangFest this past year in Montreal, and it was super cool meeting a bunch of the real big polyglots and linguists and stuff like that. Went to a lot of conferences or a lot of seminars and learned a ton of stuff. Joe says, your videos are very useful. Thank you. I appreciate it. I love hearing that. I'm glad to hear that my videos are helpful to people. Changing lives, helping people learn languages. That's what I'm all about. Anyways, yeah, so I'm going to get going here. So sorry, I know you're just joining, Joe. But if you're still free in about an hour, then check out the link.